Edward, and Shari Anderson discuss Shari's book, Aunt Sadie's Letters of Hope and Healing.
Shari, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for finding the time to join me on the podcast.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Now we were just talking and you told me something that I didn't know, which is that you've actually written a book.
Yes. It's a compilation of letters and poems written from my great aunt to my mother while my mother was hospitalized with polio in 1941. So the letters are from November 1941 to March of 1942.
Okay. There were some big things going on during 1941 and 1942.
There was. I put some of that history in the book just to give a background of what was going on in the world at that time.
Okay.
And so just kind of a small background. Not too much history, but a little bit.
This is Aunt Sadie's Letters of Hope and Healing.
Yes.
Now, what was going on in your life when you decided that this needed to be a book?
I came across the letters while cleaning out my mom's home in this wicker basket. And the letters were strewn about. There was a lot of stuff in the basket, love letters from my dad, other memorabilia. And I came across these letters and I started opening them up, and they were beautiful. I got taken aback by them. They were just warm and meaningful and in pristine condition, kind of unbelievable. So I don't know if you could see it, but this is what the letters look like.
Wow.
Just these little envelopes. And when you open up the envelope, you can see how they're just, these little, and she wrote a poem in just about every letter. Each salutation for every day, she wrote over 100 letters. So she wrote to my mom every day.
Wow.
And each salutation is different. So when people read the book, they kind of get taken aback by how clever my aunt was to write a different salutation for every day. It kind of blew me away too. I don't know how she came up with all the little salutations that she came up with. It was very sweet.
Give us some context. Now, how old was your mom when she was getting these letters? And what did the person do? They went onto Facebook and they hit a button or something to send it? How did it work in 1941? I don't even know.
So no, my mom was 10 years old. Wow. And she was paralyzed from the waist down with polio. And, no, there was no Facebook, there were no cell phones, there were no computers, there wasn't anything like that. And contact was done through letter writing.
Wow.
And that's what my aunt did. And she brought a lot of encouragement and hope and positiveness to my mom's situation. And she kind of brought the outside world in by telling her what was going on in the world and what was happening with family, and just trying to keep her spirits up.
Now, did your mom collect lots of things? I mean, did you have to go through all kinds of stuff? And by the way, I guess, what was the context when you found the letters?
I was cleaning out my mom's home. She was aging and getting on, and she was in that process of trying to just get rid of things and to have less.
Right.
And came across this basket in a storage room, and just opened up that wicker basket and found these all strewn all over the place. There was no order to anything. It was just there. She never talked about it. She never said she had them. And it was fun going through them. It was fun going through the letters and finding my dad's love letters, which were sometimes a little bit risque. I was like, oh, gotta put that away. I don't want to know about that.
Well, it was 1941, so I'm he's talking about ankles probably and necks. So yeah,
it was yeah. And then just other childhood memorabilia that she saved for myself and my brothers, which kind of surprised me as well. She never appeared to be the one to save things.
Right. So you found these. You were caring for your mom. What was the morning where you woke up and you said, you know what, on top of everything else I'm doing, I'm going to transcribe these things, and I have all this time, so I'm going to turn this into a book. What was that morning like for you?
So it actually, it happened while I was going through the letters and I was reading them. And, I said to my mom, I said, I need to do something with this. I need to make this into a book. And she's like, whatever you want to do, you can have them. It's fine. And if you want to do that, go ahead. And so I took them home and started organizing them and putting them in chronological order and reading some of them. Most of them I didn't read until I was actually transcribing them.
Okay.
Which was an exciting process because I found out so much in the letters and just there were certain things that my aunt talked about, wanting to put the poems in a book herself and do it. And so when I read all about that in the letters, I was just crying. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing what she always wanted to do, but couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so it had so much more meaning for me.
Right.
To be able to do that.
Now, how long did it take you from the time you started to the time that you felt you had a book, or you were kind of done, and then what did that process look like for you?
So I started in 2019 when I originally found the letters and I started working on them. But at the same time, my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was still doing okay. She was going for radiation treatments and we were hoping for the best. And in January of 2020, she went for additional tests and found out that she had pancreatic cancer and that they didn't get all of the cancer through the radiation treatment for her lung cancer. So it had metastasized. And she had decided that she didn't want to go on with other further treatments or do chemo or anything like that. And she was doing okay until about March of 2020. And that's when things were starting to really get difficult for her.
Right.
And that's when the pandemic started at the same time. So things were rising with the pandemic. So I brought her home for my husband and I to take care of her and brought her home. And so things were put on hold. I didn't do anything with the book. Once I started taking care of my mom, all of that got put to the side. She really would have liked if she could have seen the finished product, but that was just not going to happen.
Didn't work out. Yeah.
It didn't work out. So several months later, after my mom passed away, she passed away in July of 2020. And, going through mourning and just going through things and just taking my time. I got back into it at the end of 2020 and started going back to putting the book together and doing some research. I wanted to find out more about my aunt, my great aunt, and she passed away. My great aunt passed away in 1954, and I was born 8 months later.
Okay.
And I'm named after her. So it has even a little bit more meaning, being that I'm doing this I feel almost like I'm doing this for her. And then being named after her just kind of has that, I don't know, emotional tug a little bit.
Did you ever throughout this process get to the point where it was just seemed like too big a job, or it was too emotional, or it wasn't worth it, to finish and actually get everything into the book?
No, it was emotional, and I had to sometimes take a break, and because I'd be crying from reading stuff. But it gave me, there was so much positive in it, though, and it gave me such great insight into who my mother was. I began to understand her better.
Right.
What kind of person she was and what made her who she was, and my aunt had a lot to do with that. And the letters kind of fill that in with things that she taught her in those letters and told her, and just the way she was, and just kind of filled in that gap for who my mom was, which
it sounds
really
like
amazing.
Yeah, that was a very unique part of I don't want to call it the grieving process, but if anyone's lost a parent, that the time around their death, I mean, it is a grieving process, and you were able to focus, it sounds like, through this project, and maybe even if it didn't help you through the process, there was at least something to do while you were going through it, I guess would be. I don't know how to say it exactly right, but you're able to kind of focus what was going on into this book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
That's interesting.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and you mentioned you're crying when you write. I cry when I write my books too, but I write mostly out of shame and just disappointment at what I put on the page versus what you've done, which is a beautiful book. So the book's been out now about a year. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Has anything surprised you about its reception?
I don't know if it would be a surprise, but I'm really glad that people who are reading it are getting out of it what I was hoping people would get from it.
Okay. Okay.
Understanding, the struggle that my mom had to go through to learn how to walk again and to roll over for the first time on her own.
Yeah.
And things of that nature. And just, people saying, I wish I had an aunt like that in my life. I wished I'd had an aunt like that in my life. She was a special person. And I unfortunately never got to meet her or know her. But so I think people got out of it what I was hoping they would get out of it when they read it.
Okay. And the book's on Amazon and it's getting really good reviews. People do, it does resonate with folks when they read it, I think, based on what I've seen of what people said about it.
Yes, thank you. It seems that way. It makes me happy.
Good. Interesting. All right. Well, do you have plans for a follow-up, or is this a one-time thing, or are you what? I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. We haven't talked about that.
No, and I don't know. That's a good question. Everybody asks me that, and I thought about just taking the poems separate, titling them. There's another thing that my aunt talked about in the book is putting a name to each poem, which she never really did. She wanted to do that with my mom when she got out of the hospital, but I could not find anything where anything like that was ever done. So I thought about doing that. That's pretty much it for now. This was a hard process. It's not easy to put a book together.
Well, and you're not that far removed. We talked about this a little bit, but earlier, but you're not that far removed from all of it still, right? So I mean, it's you're still just going
fresh.
Yeah, it's still fresh. I don't know, like I mean, when we have, I know the process you're going through. So I kind of know where you are, and so I think it's great. I wouldn't have been able to focus myself to put a book together of all things, while all that other stuff was going on. So good for you. So would you have any advice, if someone maybe is going through a similar situation as you, or they come across, I mean, these are historically, I know they're personally and relevant, but they're also historically relevant because, I joked, Facebook wasn't around back then, but, the way people talked to each other was different back then, whatever back then means, but right, just society was very different. So there's a fascinating and important historical context, I think, to the letters, in addition to their content and stuff. So I think it's good that you preserve them, for posterity. I think that's important.
Thank you. Yeah, I that is very true, and it is historical. And I did, when I transcribed the letters, I didn't change them or alter the wording. I kept it true to what it was at the time. I wanted it to be genuine, and it is different. There were words that are different. People don't talk like that anymore. They don't address each other the same way like that anymore. And so there's a lot of historical significance to it.
And even, as you said, even just the art of 100 different opening salutations, right?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I mean, what do we know now? We know hello, hey, and yo or something. I don't know. But
I'll give you an example. So this one, she addressed my dear little early bird.
Okay.
So each one has just that little bit of
right. That's really
different.
Interesting. That's wonderful.
That's yeah.
Okay. Well, Shari, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I'll put a link to your book down below. And you know what, if you get another writing project, or if you want to talk again in 6 months or so, maybe we'll check in and just see how it's going with this book.
Oh, I would love to do that. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. I'll see you, Shari. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.